people want to move, yeah. Just swivel your chair, find a spot. You won't be able to see. You can't see.
What is she doing on the floor?
Okay, can everyone see? Is everyone happy with where they're situated? Okay. Are you ready for a story? Speak louder.
Yeah, just shout.
There's a lot of wind sound coming through. Well, come closer. You're sitting near the door which has a breeze. Come a bit closer. It's not a long story, so if you want to stand, that's just okay. Just wait for Tam. Ready? Okay. Place. Throughout our lives, we find ourselves in different places. Some are easy, some more difficult, and some perhaps a little bit threatening. Sometimes the landscape keeps changing, and we may even feel a little bit lost. But in every place, there is hope. You are invited to be curious about the story. There was once a traveller who was carrying a rock. And sometimes the rock felt very heavy. But it became increasingly familiar. One day, he met a stranger, also carrying a heavy load. They journeyed together for a while, and they wondered whether it was possible to leave the rock. At the end of the day, the traveller was ready to put down his rock. And as he put it down, it turned into a roaring campfire. And they journeyed on together. When the stranger was ready to put down his rock, it turned into a refreshing spring, and they could both drink from it. The two then journeyed on together, refreshed, and they continued on their journeys. Now I wonder, what you liked about the story. There are no right or wrong answers.
Are we supposed to speak?
You're welcome to speak. I'm encouraging you to speak.
I'm very glad that they got rid of the rocks.
Okay. Sue's glad they got rid of the rocks.
Carrying the rock is optional.
Carrying the rock is optional. Yes. Thank you, Ada.
Everybody got their own rock.
Everybody's got their own rock. Thank you, Charles. There was a comment.
Putting the rock down turns into something positive.
Putting the rock down turns into something positive. Thank you, Cheryl.
Putting the rock down can help somebody else.
Putting the rock down can help somebody else. Thank you, Beth.
It might be necessary to examine.
Okay, I'll come to you just now, Charlotte.
It might be necessary to examine why you were carrying the rock in the first place.
It might be necessary to examine why you were carrying the rock in the first place.
Hmm?
Thank you, Ada. Charlotte.
We can't do this on our own. We need to travel with somebody.
We need to travel with somebody. We can't do it on our own. Thank you. I wonder what...
necessarily limited to bearing one rock.
We aren't necessarily limited to bearing one rock. Are we? No, we aren't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
As heavy and as burdened as the rock were, they still had the courage to continue their dreams.
Okay, they had the courage, the traveller and the stranger both had the courage to continue on their journeys despite being heavily, or carrying a heavy load.
For some people, it's not always possible to put the rock down.
For some people, it's not always possible to put the rock down. Thank you, Kate. I wonder if there was what you didn't like about the story.
The guy that became comfortable with his rock.
The guy that became comfortable with his rock. Thank you.
Sorry, repeat that, please.
I wonder what you didn't like about the story. And Cheryl said the guy who became comfortable with his rock.
And he didn't want to examine it.
He didn't want to examine it.
Perhaps it implies that it's easy to put down the rock.
Okay. Perhaps it implies that it's easy to put down the rock.
that sometimes it takes so long for us to realize that putting the rock down actually transforms it into something else.
Okay, perhaps it takes so long and it takes us so long to realize that when we put down the rock, or it takes us a long time to realize that when we put down the rock, it transforms it into someone else. Sorry. Yeah. It's a transformational process.
How do you identify in the first place that you are actually carrying a rock?
How do you identify that you're actually carrying a rock? Good question.
Maybe some of us don't even realize that we are carrying a rock.
Maybe some of us don't realize that we are even carrying a rock. Thank you.
Well, they didn't really speak to each other about the rocks that they were carrying. They just carried it by themselves together alone, put it down. I suppose not reaped, but got some feedback when they put it down, so they both enjoyed the fire, they both enjoyed the refreshing drink. But there wasn't really a conversation.
So there wasn't enough interaction between the two.
Life is a rock.
Life is a rock. Thank you.
True.
But we can make that rock heavier or lighter.
We can make that rock heavier or lighter.
A geologist might find some value in the rock.
Pardon?
A
A geologist might find some value in the rock. Indeed. Indeed. And I wonder where you might be in this story.
Yeah, if you've managed to put your own rock down, you might be able to help somebody else put theirs down too.
Okay. Kate says if you've managed to put down your own rock, you might help someone else to put down their rock.
I might pick up the same rock for a different reason.
You might pick up the same rock for a different reason. Thank you.
Different rocks are assigned to different people.
Different rocks are assigned to different people. Do you want this rock? Is that too big? Do you want this rock? The small rock. Okay, there we go. I'll put in a small rock there for Charles.
Do we get a choice of which rock we get?
Good question. Do you think you get a choice of which rock you get?
I think so.
I don't think so. So must I give this one to Charles?
I don't know if we even have a choice to give anything to anybody. It just comes.
It just comes.
Some rocks just land in our arms very unexpectedly and unwelcomely.
Yeah. Yeah. And some rocks can actually be quite pretty.
But they're still heavy.
They're still heavy. They're still heavy.
I think also that, each rock carries its own weight. And very often, we think that our rock is very heavy until we realize that somebody else's rock is actually heavier than ours.
Okay. So each rock has its own weight, and sometimes we think our rock is very heavy until we see someone else's or feel someone else's rock.
Is it my rock
Good question. Is the rock personal or does it belong to a group of people?
Does the rock get heavier over time or does it get lighter?
Another good question. Does the rock get heavy over time or does it get lighter over time?
I think that depends on how you deal with the rock.
Okay? Depends on how you deal with the rock.
Did they put down the rock because it became too heavy, or they just put it down because they're tired of carrying it? When they dropped the rock, was it because it became too heavy because they journeyed a long time with the rock on them until the point where they decided to drop the rock? What made them drop the rock?
What do you think? Why do you think people put down the rock eventually? Was it because it was too heavy? Or was it because they got tired of carrying it?
Or both?
I think they were tired of carrying the rock.
Okay, tired of carrying it?
Or maybe they don't need it anymore.
Maybe they don't need it anymore? Perhaps they realized they had a choice? Yes?
Perhaps they won the battle.
Perhaps they won the battle. For all that has been said and for all that has not been said, thank you. I think I'll leave this